The paintwork of the body is not of good quality and resistance to mechanical stress. In addition to the rapid falling of the paintwork with chips and scratches, the body can present unpleasant surprises in the form of paint swelling. As a rule, paint swells on the roof, wheel arches, and in places of chips. But the body iron here is of good quality, thanks to which the car steadfastly resists the onslaught of the red disease. One of the main troubles of Albea are doors, as many minor troubles are associated with them. Most often, Fiat Albea owners blame the door handles for sticking on the open position, does not return to its original position, which is why the door does not close. Due to the fact that the handle is sold complete with an auto lock, its replacement is expensive, $100 to $100. Often there are complaints about sagging loops. Over time, the hinges of many begin to creak. There are also complaints about the quality of the seals, they let moisture through, the joint of the rubber bands of the windows are of poor quality, there are gaps. On the electrics, one can note the short service life of the high-beam highlight bulbs. Fiat Albea was equipped with 3 petrol power units, 1.2 I 60 and 80 horsepower, 1.4 I 77 horsepower, 1.6 103 horsepower, and turbo diesel 1.3 I 70 horsepower. In the domestic market, cars are presented only with a 77-strong engine, 1.4 liters. This unit is reliable, but demanding in terms of quality and service intervals. It is also worth noting the sensitivity of this engine to fuel quality. The fact is that the fuel filter is not installed on the car, because of this, the injectors quickly becomes dirty. The timing drive is driven by a belt, which must be changed every 60,000 kilometers. Since there are no hydraulic compensators in the motor closer to 150,000 kilometers, it becomes necessary to adjust the thermal clearances of the valves. The advantages of this motor include low fuel consumption, an average of 6-7 liters per 100 kilometers traveled, and easy of maintenance. Of the shortcomings, the owners of Fiat Albea most often note unstable idling in the cold season, the sensor freezes. Also, the rear engine mount is considered a weak point here, as a rule, by 100,000 km it needs to be replaced. At the same run, there is a high probability of failure of the Bendix and the starter retractory relay. The cooling system is also not famous for its reliability. Here, the expansion tank, radiator, thermostat, and pump flow require special attention. Closer to 150,000 km, the exhaust system is rented out. It rots and burns out. After 200,000 km, an oil burner appears, which will progress with increasing mileage. To eliminate the disease, it is necessary to replace the valve stem seals. In some cases, the problem is solved only after replacing the oil scraper rings. Also, oil consumption may increase with prolonged movement at high speeds. On a run of 150 to 100,000 km, the generator bearing is rented out, and cracks may appear on its body. The unreliable nodes also include the crankcase exhaust pipeline, cases of rupture have been noted, and expensive ignition coils that can fail for no reason. The engine resource is 350–400,000 km. Transmission. Fiat Albea was completed only with a 5-speed manual transmission. This unit is considered quite reliable, although it is not without weaknesses. One of these is the release bearing, the service life of which in rare cases exceeds 70,000 km. When replacing the bearings, it is recommended to change the clutch kit as well. Clutch resource 100–150,000 km. Also, the third gear synchronizer may require attention quite early. Closer to 250,000 km, the auto pivot joint and the gear selection mechanism need to be replaced. The anthers of the drivers can also be attributed to the problem, they do not tolerate severe cold and are picky about tightening the clamps. Some owners of cars of the first years of production were faced with the rapid wear of differential bearings, a hum appears. Operational disadvantages include the noise of the gearbox and insufficiently clear gear switching. Despite the fact that the car uses a semi-independent suspension, front McPherson strut, rear torsion beam, the chassis has an acceptable level of comfort and handling for this class of car. As for the reliability of the suspension elements of the Fiat Albea, then, in general, it can be called hardy, with the exception of a few elements. In addition to the stabilizer struts, which are not reliable even in more expensive cars, silent blocks of levers, ball bearings and wheel bearings are quickly surrendered on a run of 50–80,000 km. The front shock absorbers are not famous for their reliability either, for many they do not withstand even 100,000 km. The remaining parts, with careful operation, serve an average of 120–150,000 km. With the regular loads on the rear axle by 200,000 km, you will have to change the springs of the rear shock absorbers, they sag, break. The most reliable are the silent blocks of the beam, as a rule, their resource exceeds 250,000 km. The steering system uses a rack and pinion mechanism with power steering. As a rule, problems with this node begin closer to 150,000 km, plastic bushings break, flows. Closer to 200,000 km, power steering GUR requires attention, the oil seal is leaking. As for the reliability of consumables, it is worth noting a small resource of steering rods, 60–80,000 km go. Symptoms: a large free play of the steering wheel, the presence of external sounds, knocking when the steering wheel is rotated to the sides. The braking system is reliable. Interior: like most budget cars, the interior of the Fiat Albea is made of cheap materials and lacks any frills in design. The main problem here is excessive noise. In addition to plastic trim elements, extraneous sounds can be emitted over time by the front seats, the trunk shelf. Poor sound insulation aggravates the situation with acoustic comfort. Over time, the pipes of the stove radiator begin to flow at the junctions. By 100,000 km, the ignition lock starts to stick, the mechanism wears out. On the same run, there is a high probability of failure of the thermal fuse of the stove fan resistor. By 150,000 km, the fan motor may need to be replaced, for the replacement of which you will have to pay a tidy sum. For replacement, you need to disassemble the front panel. There are also complaints about the reliability of the steering column switches, windshield wipers and washers, dipped main beam turned on incorrectly. Also, the lack of Russian language in the onboard computer menu can be attributed to the disadvantages. Fiat Albea is a fairly reliable car that with proper maintenance will not bother with breakdowns for a long time. Of course, this model is not perfect and certain troubles happened over time, but in fairness, it should be said that their elimination does not require significant costs. Another plus of this model is that these cars, unlike the same Renault Logan or Nissan Almera, were very rarely taken for service in corporate fleets and taxis, which means it will be much easier to find a live copy. The best option for purchasing Fiat Albea in the secondary market are copies of the last years of production, 2010-2012. If you are the owner of this car model, please describe the problems that you had to face during the operation of the car. Perhaps it is your review that will help readers of our site when choosing a car.